the importance of the local church. And go ahead and give me a click on that presentation there. One more. It's central. The local church is central in all of the ministries that we have in Manna Worldwide. If there is not a local church in a particular area that we need to start a project in, then that becomes a goal. So, for example, if we're going to be going into a new area, like a restricted access nation, let's say we're going to Iraq or we're going to Jordan, and we need to be able to start with a project, well, know that the part of that process of starting that project is going to be starting a local church right there. And so we exist to meet spiritual needs. Next click. And we can't do that without the local church. The local church is what God has chosen to be that lighthouse in our world, to meet the needs of those around us. I think it's important for us to recognize that it is the spiritual need that is priority. Yes, we can be involved in a lot of really good things in the world. We can be involved in feeding the hungry, helping the poor. We can be involved in relief work. We can be involved in education. We can be involved in all of these things. But if we miss this first one, we have completely missed it. I think it's also important for us to understand that it's priority. It really comes first. It's on top of everything. It's not even on the same level as all of those other kinds of ministries. So we're not even saying that it's just as important. And no, we're saying it's way more important. And so we meet those spiritual needs. Next click, please. Rescuing children from the grip of poverty. That's the slogan of Manna Worldwide. Rescuing children from the grip of poverty. Now, we have to understand what that poverty is. The first is depravity. This is a spiritual poverty that is because of sin. And so we move into these different areas, wherever they may be, and it is to rescue them from the grip of that spiritual poverty, from sin, from death. And that is done by the preaching of the gospel. And so as a result, in all of these other ministries that we see, all of these open doors and privileges and opportunities that God gives us, the gospel is preached. Kids and families come to know Christ as their Savior. It's a beautiful thing. So let's move around this circle and let's see the beautiful ways God has allowed Manna Worldwide to be a blessing in this dark world, in this world full of suffering. So the first area that we look at is the nutrition centers. So how did Manna Worldwide start? Well, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Bruce O'Neill, he was planning a church in the Philippines. And as he was planning that church and going to the location where he was planning it at, he kept on driving by every single day this large community of people that is very poor. No one was engaging them, but he was driving by them every day. Driving by them, these multitudes of people. And it began to really burden Bruce. And he said to his church, if we don't engage them and meet them where they're at, who is going to do that? This is the responsibility of our local church, our responsibility. And so what can we do to reach in there and rescue them from the grip of poverty, from sin, from death, but also be the hands and feet of Jesus, where, as we know, and we must recognize that Jesus, when he was here, he touched the leper. He touched the blinded man. He touched the lame. He was there. He met them. He healed them. He lived among them even. And so Bruce and his church, they started the very first ever nutrition center. It was a beautiful thing that people started being reached. Kids were being reached. Kids were receiving the gospel every day as the kids would come for lunch. Then the families started to get engaged. They would start going to the church. Moms and dads became part of the project as they became volunteers. And then they became part of the church. It's just an amazing how it all snowballed. And then other missionaries said, we want to do that. We've been driving by communities just like that one. We've not done anything. So help us do that. And so in that help, the way that God led Bruce was to start Manna Worldwide, to raise funds for missionaries and for local pastors and churches to be able to reach into their communities. And so it started with nutrition centers, but 20 years later, over 20 years later, we are now in 200 different countries, and 50 different countries, and we have over 200 projects. And those, 200 countries. That is kind of, 200 projects, and those projects are now more than just nutrition centers, more than feeding centers. And as you see, as we go around this circle, on this slide, you'll see all of the ways that God has allowed us to be able to reach into those communities. Next, we have orphanages. This has been a wonderful way. And you'll see how some of these kind of really go into the other, how they're combined. Obviously, as we're caring for orphans, they're living on a campus. They're living with families. They're living with those that are taking care of them. They're being fed. They're having education right there. And they're in. Think of COVID. All that happened within those facilities. So they were receiving their education in that place. They were receiving the gospel, discipleship, all happening right there. We have orphanages from Ivory Coast to Cambodia to Mongolia to Guatemala, Myanmar, so many different places that God has allowed us to be able to reach in and reach these people. Then we have education. We have schools all over. And I can think of, we were just in Kenya last year, and we had the opportunity to see what God is doing in Mombasa. And we have several schools there, and I'm going to tell you that these schools are not just a couple of kids or, 20 or 30. No, we're talking in the hundreds. So we went to this one school, and we were outside, and we were playing these games. I don't know if you've ever played the game when you're with a group of people, and you say, okay, everyone form groups of 3, and everyone scatters and forms groups of 3. Well, we did this game, but it came to the point where I was getting form groups of 20, form groups of 50, form groups of 100. And they would grab, you should have seen the massive kids just going around. Imagine what is happening in those schools. The gospel is being preached. These kids are being discipled. They're in Mombasa. It's so beautiful. And then we have some that are on a smaller scale, like in Bogota, Colombia, at the church that we planted. We have an after-school program with Ali Alexander, missionary there. And Thursday and Friday, before and after school, depending on the shift of school, kids come in, they receive tutoring, and then they receive a lunch and then a Bible study. We have 2 shifts every Thursday and Friday on that. So it's just a unique way of how God has combined those opportunities there in Colombia. So we have providing education, and then we have medical clinics. Medical clinics, like the one we have in Tinca, Romania. Now, we all understand what's happening in that region of the world with the Ukrainian crisis. Ukrainians are now pouring into places like Tinca, places like Kumpulun, Places like this where they're in Romania, where we already have ministries, and we are now receiving Ukrainian refugees. It's a beautiful thing how God puts all of that together. And it's not just so that we can provide for a physical need. God is opening up doors, mega doors, to be able to speak truth into their lives. We have a family, New Manna missionaries, that are moving to Romania right now. And I was talking with him on the phone the other day, just helping him out. He said, Scott, several years ago when we were praying about going to Europe, Eastern Europe, we actually wanted to go to Ukraine. But the Lord led us to Romania. And now we know why. They're moving to Romania here, I think, next week or in 2 weeks. And they're going to be there. And he said, Scott, what do I do? All of a sudden, we're going to be in the midst of several different language groups. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. But I've got some ideas, and so we talked and everything. But just amazing how God is doing all of that. So for medical clinics and then now to clean water. What an analogy. When you go into villages in Honduras and Thailand, and we're hoping to even see a well put in on the northern part of Colombia. What a wonderful analogy. The living water. You know, they need pure water. And in the process of digging that well, and when it's finally broken, the water just comes up. Well, just think about the water that is preached. The true living water, Jesus Christ, and how that just bubbles up within the person as they accept the gospel. This is happening in so many different places. And then from clean water to what we call training and mobilization. This is the full circle. When we came in to Manna in 2018, and this is the piece of the circle that we brought with us. It completes the circle. And so now we think about what it's going to take in order to see this duplicated, this circle duplicated all around the world. So this morning, if you have your Bibles, I'd like for you to turn to Matthew chapter 28. And this is the main passage this morning in Sunday school or in this hour, but then also in the next hour. Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Some of you might know this verse. Some of you might know it very well. But I think it's important for us to see these words on the pages. So Matthew 28, 19 and 20. It says, go therefore, and what? Go ahead and give us another click on that slide. There we go. To do what? To make disciples of all nations. To make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And we call this passage, amongst others, the Great Commission. And we have a variation of this in all of the Gospels and in Acts. But typically when people think of the Great Commission, this is where they go to, Matthew 28. And it is a good one. And here we have some explicit commands, some explicit aspects of the commission, but there are also some implicit ones. Now, let's look at the explicit ones. They're the easiest. 1, we must go. 2, we must make disciples. 3, we must baptize the new disciples in the name of the Father, Son, and the Spirit. And then we must teach those new disciples. Those are the explicit commands of the Great Commission. Now, what are the implicit ones? The ones that are not directly said, the ones that we understand because of the context. Here they are. The implicit aspects are, number 1, the multiplication aspect. The Great Commission is about multiplication. All new disciples who are taught, all new disciples who are made and then taught, then turn and engage in disciple making. That's an important piece of this. And that is why this church exists. This is why you follow Christ. Is because there's a chain of disciples that obeyed this command. That chain is important. Second aspect that is implicit, and that is the multicultural aspect. All the disciples make new disciples in all nations. Other cultures are engaged. The new disciples from those new cultures then engage in the same command. Think about this. And that command is to go to all nations. Now, I'm going to say something. This might blow your mind. But did you know that the Great Commission wasn't only given to the American church? And maybe this is really going to blow your mind. Did you know that Americans were not present when the Great Commission was given? It's not all about us, guys. And so this means that as we go into all the world and preach the gospel, they are to do the same. It's an amazing concept, and we have it right here. Now, I've mentioned before a lot of the different training opportunities that we've had in Latin America. We've been able to be in Colombia, of course, Ecuador, Mexico, and many other doors opening in so many different parts of the world. But our desire is to see them take steps to obey the Great Commission, to go to the uttermost. And that gave birth to the ministry that we call the Latin Initiative, which is a project of Manna Worldwide. And I believe it's just the first of the initiatives that we will be starting. I think there's going to come a day when we'll be talking about the Kenya Initiative. I believe that we'll be talking about other areas where they will be engaged in the Great Commission, and we will be helping, mentoring them, training them, and coaching them in that process. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I want you to imagine, go ahead and go to the next slide there, Braden. I want you to imagine this little girl. Her name is Valeria. She is from Tequila, Mexico. Now she could represent any other little girl or little boy that grows up in a Manna project. And now, over 20 years later, there are a lot of kids who have grown up in these different projects. And as they have grown up in the local church. And like Valeria, they are saying, God loves me so much. God loves me so much, and I have seen how He has loved me through others who have come. My local church, missionaries, and I believe that God is leading me to go. And this is the truth about Valeria. She is 9 years old, 10 now, and she believes that God is leading her to the regions beyond. And we're going to be there for her. To get her there. Berean can be right there as you partner with us. So just imagine that. But not just Valeria, many kids that have grown up, and even older people that have come to this as volunteers through their local church, and they say, you know what? God is leading me to do the same thing. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, as we think about this training aspect and this mobilization aspect, there is a deep discipleship that needs to happen. And this is where a step in all of this that I believe is incredibly important and that is what we call the Discipleship School found in Columbia. Go to the next slide. So this is our Discipleship School that we started in 2016, along with others, especially good friends of ours, Hugo Mario and his wife, Juli. They are very good. They're family, basically. And they have been leading this Discipleship School since 2016. This year, through some very cool events, the Discipleship School is becoming a manna project. And we are able to engage through this Discipleship School. We're able to disciple and see many come to the not just a knowledge of who Jesus is, but a deep relationship with him. It is a beautiful thing that what God does. But the school is basically, it's 4 months long. It's intense discipleship where they receive different subjects from different professors from all over the world. They come, they teach, they're in class, they live there, they live with the other students. They're receiving all of these things. They have mentors, student mentors. And so there is one-on-one discipleship taking place all the time during the first 3 months. And then the last month, the 4th month, they go on a month-long missions trip where they're serving in different areas of Colombia. Now, does that sound like training and mobilization to you? Absolutely. But we need to understand that the Discipleship School is not designed in order to produce pastors, missionaries, and full-time Christian workers. It's not designed to do that. But it does provide an environment where those kind of decisions are made. You see, what we're really wanting are sold-out disciples of Christ. Not everyone's going to become a cross-cultural missionary living in Iraq, like our Latin American friends, Ediberto and his wife, Ines. Not everyone's going to do that, but there are going to be some who will. Like, for example, next slide, Luis Felipe. He's been praying about going to Syria, and right now he's in that process. He's gone through our discipleship school. He's been a student mentor, and now he's part of the institute. I am teaching him and coaching him, mentoring him through this. He is going to be probably one of our first students in our forthcoming online missions program there in Latin America that is going to accompany any Bible institute across Latin America so that students can graduate with an emphasis in missions and go to places like Syria. So this is training and mobilization. But we're going to do something a little bit different right now, because really what I want you guys to understand is the importance of the Discipleship School. And my desire is for Berean to adopt the Discipleship School as your project, where you're developing relationships with the team there, where you're developing relationships with the students and mentors, where even they can come here and visit, like Hugo Mario and Juli, being able to come here and be able to present and tell you what's going on. See, this is what we want. We'd love for Berean to get behind this because we're needing partners. The cool thing is that this year, we've already raised enough to be able to launch. We've already raised $20,000 to be able to launch that project this year. But now we're thinking about next year. And what we really need are churches like Berean to get behind us on a monthly basis. We'd love to see Berean do that. Here's the other really cool thing. Our plan is to purchase our own property someday. That's probably going to cost anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 because we're looking at buying a coffee farm. That's a story in of itself. You can read more about that back there. But get this, we've already raised $200,000 of that. God is in this. God is providing. So as we think about disciples and making disciples, I want to do something this morning. One of the exercises that I teach in the school is about going into a new community. Let's say we are a team and we're going to go plant a church in a nearby community. Someone give me a community that where we're going to, just somewhere close to here, we're going to go start a new church. Where should we go? Sorry? Humansville. All right? So we're going to Humansville. All right. We're going to Humansville, and we're going to start a church. Now, let's say it's a new community for us. We don't know anyone there. So we're moving there, but we don't know anybody. Here is what we need to do. We need to be able to integrate into that community. How do we integrate into that community? What do we do? How do we meet people? How do we develop friendships? What do you think? Find a job. Wow, okay. That's excellent. What else? Why is that important?
Because you meet the people that you're working with.
Absolutely.
You develop the relationships outside of the spiritual context. You're developing the relationship interpersonal with how you work and how you interact with them, run breaks and stuff like that.
Fantastic. Hey, Jesus was a carpenter, right? I bet you he built some stuff with some people. And I bet you Paul, put together some tents with some others as well. Other ideas? What do you think? Give me some ideas. Let's name them out. Ooh, hangouts. Very good. Yeah, do they hang out at the local Starbucks? No, because there isn't one. But there is a coffee house somewhere probably. School events. What else? Sorry? Ooh, okay. Other ideas? Sorry? Eat together. Wow, Roberta. Where? Out in your home, right? So this means that you're inviting people to your home. What a concept. This used to be a very normal part of our culture back in the day, right? It's turned into more of, well, let's go eat out. But think about eating together at your home. What about this? What about when they invite you? Could it happen? You bet it can. So how about this? How about accept, invitations. We lived in Colombia, and our neighbors or just people would invite us to birthday parties, and we were like, but it was an opportunity to be able to go and develop relationships. And so most of the time, we did it. Accept invitations. What else? Other ideas? I'm going to pull them out of you. There are a lot. We can get into some of the simple ones. How about this? How do you meet your neighbor? The one that lives right next door. What? Go outside. Okay. Cookies. What else? Communication. Who said that? Wow. In what sense? All right. I'm going to write that down. Communication. So, how many of you got a phone? You got a phone? Not yet. Good job, Pops. Most of us have phones. How about getting their phone number and actually sending them a text? Actually sending them or calling them even. Oh my goodness, you can use a phone for calling too? Yes, call them. Yes. What else? Come on. How do you meet that neighbor? How are you going to develop that relationship? How are you going to make sure you remember their name? Knock on his door? But, Bob, I thought there was a barrier there. We don't go that far. We need to. What else? Walk with them. Let's say that in Humansville, one of the cultural practices that they have there are going out and walking dogs. Maybe the way we're going to get to meet our neighbors is we're going to have to buy a dog. Seriously, why not? We tried that. That did not go so well, but we did meet people because our dog was attacking everyone else's, but we did meet people. We did meet people. What else? Gym. Absolutely. All right, so now we're kind of getting to this idea of where do people go? Joy, you said hangouts. But where do they go? See, this is going to require us to observe and to see where they're at. This does not happen on accident. This happens on purpose. And I don't know if you really got this, but as you think about all these different ideas, and we can even get into the idea of, I need a cup of sugar. And so you go to your neighbor. Man, I got this going. I can't run to the store right now. Can I borrow a cup of sugar? Seriously, why not? I've got a problem with my fence. I know how to fix my fence. But maybe the way that I can get to know my neighbor is, hey, neighbor, can you come and help me fix my fence? You have that relationship building. All for the purpose of what? Developing sincere relationships in order to share the gospel, make disciples. Now, if you really think about this, all these things that we're writing down, what's the difference than where you're already living right now? Isn't it the same thing? So as I teach the students in the discipleship school, this is a light bulb moment. I've been thinking about everything that we could do over there, and someone says, wait, Scott, we can do that here. That's right. Why aren't you? So then we take a break, and I erase everything. And everyone watches me. Can you imagine how awkward this was when I had to teach this on Zoom? I did, but man, it felt weird. So we've taken a break. It's a 20-minute break, and we got back. We're still talking about this idea of making disciples. But now we're going to change it up. We're going to think about a different aspect of making disciples. Really what we're going to do is we're going to change the place we're going. Because what I want you to do now is I want to get you to start thinking cross-culturally. So what we're going to do as a team, and really analyze this, okay? What we're going to do as a team is we're going to move to Suleimania, Iraq. Everyone with me? Pastor, no one wants to go. Can I say this? Suleimania is a safe place. It's the Kurdistan area. There's no fighting or anything going on, and there hasn't been for a very, 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 very long time. So now you're ready to go. We're going to Suleimania, Iraq. Actually, we have Latin American missionaries that are there right now, serving, ministering, making disciples. So we're moving there. We're a team. We're going to integrate into that community. Question, who knows anyone, except for me, my wife, who knows anyone in Suleimania, Iraq? No one knows anyone. Wow, so we've got some work to do. So we're moving to this new place. We're integrating into this new community in a completely different country. What are we going to have to do in order to be able to make disciples? What do we got to do? Learn the language. Boom. Okay? What else? Understand their culture. Okay? Understand their culture. What? Ooh. That's true. What else? Help people out. Man, Zane, that's awesome. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot, though. If we're going to help people out, what do we got to know? How many are there with him? If we're going to help, we got to know what the needs are. So what does that mean? How do we find out what the needs are? Ask? Who said ask? You said ask. Who do we ask? That's a lot of people. Who do we ask? Our neighbor. All right. We can ask our neighbor. Okay. Co-worker. Uh-oh, but there was a step there. Could it be possible that we get a job? What if you're not allowed to work? Volunteer? Ooh, I like that one. Start Manna Project. Okay, all right. We got to know what the needs are. We got to ask. Who do we ask? Let's ask our neighbors. Of course, that's going to be after we learn, Kurdish. But what? Make friends. Wow. And how are we going to make friends? Talking.
I bet they drink coffee.
Coffee. Absolutely. I'm going to write that one down. Go to the grocery store. Help build something. Let's go build some stuff. How do we meet our neighbor? Bingo. Right there. All of this is no different than what we would do in Humansville. The only thing that creates a little bit of an issue is the language and the culture. But as we learn that, and even in that process, you're engaging in all of these things. Today, I learned the word for celery in Kurdish. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the market, and I'm going to use the word celery. I am not joking. This is what you do. And as they watch this crazy American fumble around in their language, the relationships are built. This is the amazing thing. This takes away this, oh my goodness, it's cross-cultural work. I could never do that. No, the truth is, it's actually the same thing that we need to be doing right here. The exact same thing. Now, here is a reality, and this happens to missionaries. A missionary can move to a place like Iraq or Romania or wherever, and they can enclose themselves in their home. They can lock themselves up in their home and never meet anybody. You see, going isn't enough. Going is not enough. We're not going to accidentally make disciples by going. The making disciples part is intentional. You guys with me on that? Any questions? Any thoughts? Any questions? Any questions about manna? Any questions about the discipleship school? Anything at all? Oh, Joy. I don't know. I didn't actually learn that one. I know the word for God. Yeah, choda. Yeah. What do you guys think about the idea of the discipleship school? What do you think about it? Do you think it's something that we need to get behind? So the students, that's a great question. The students who go to the discipleship school are all high school graduates. And that is the age that we really focus in on. So high school grads, and obviously that can extend out to older people. And we have had older people actually do the school. But most of them are between 17 and 24, 25, usually in that area. This is a it's actually the age group that I'm thinking of right now in Columbia is from 17 to 35. This age group they are part of that we call the ninis. Ni trabajan, ni estudian. What that means is that they don't work, all the Spanish, they don't work and they don't study. And so this is a very, very important time as they are making decisions, but they're not working and they're not studying. So they are targets for all of the guerrilla groups, paramilitary groups, cartels, gangs, you name it, and they're involved in it. And this is the fruit of years, decades of this difficult culture till now. And so as we saw kids accept Christ, as we saw them getting engaged in the church, we knew that we had to do something to be able to get them to take those steps to walk with Jesus. And the discipleship school was the answer to that. It's a great question, honey. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Let me ask you this. How many of you would like to go and see? Yeah, anyone? Let's say that the vaccination requirement's taken off. How many are ready to go? All right, got more hands, buddy. All right. We want to do that. You know, a couple of years ago, as a church, we were going to be going to Colombia, but because of COVID, we had to cancel that trip. I'm really hoping that we'll be able to get it back on the schedule sometime soon.
How much does it cost for the kids to go to school?
That's a great question. So the students themselves actually pay for their school. Now, what they pay doesn't cover all of the costs involved, like operational expenses and all of that. And so for a semester long, we're looking at about just under $20,000 in order to be able to put everyone through. And that includes all of their food, it includes all of the professors, it includes all of these different operational expenses. In this case, it would be rent. It would include transportation and stuff for the professors that are coming in. So it's not something that is cheap, right? But it is something that is worth it. Our goal is to see 3 schools a year. They're 4 months long, so we can get in 3 schools a year. And we can go upwards to having 50 in a school. Now, we're starting this year with about 15, and that's been typical, the amount that we've had go through, because because of the space that we had. But where we're renting now is larger, and so we can have more students. And then eventually we're going to be buying our own property, and so we'll be able to have more students come in. The cool thing is they own this, because they themselves are paying for their schooling. They are getting their local churches to support them in that. They have to raise their funds for the trip, by the way. That 4-week missions trip at the end of the school time, they raise those funds from local churches there and individuals.
It's not per student.
No,
That's for the whole semester.
that's for the whole semester for everyone. Yep. That was not clear. Thank you for clearing that up.
Scott, is this something that's replicable in other countries, or are students from other countries easily able to get there?
Yes. So, this is fantastic. We've already had students from other countries go to our school. One in particular, Panama. They speak Spanish, so it works out perfectly. So we would love to see other places where we work for them to send students to our school in Colombia. However, what we have is something that we need to export. And so we actually have plans to see this duplicated in other parts of Latin America and even beyond Latin America in other countries that do not speak Spanish. So.
What about kids from here who might know Spanish?
That is definitely a possibility. Levi, if you can learn Spanish, if you can learn... Well, then we need to start one in Germany, buddy. 9. Any other questions? Yes?
So after it's all said and done, do the students get reintegrated back into the community? Do they go to a local church? Where do they go?
That's fantastic. Remember, local church central, all of our ministries. And so the Discipleship School remains connected to all the local churches that send the students. And so our desire, or what we do, is that the pastors and members of that church continue a communication with the students while they're at the school. And so when they finally graduate, the idea is to send them back, see them reintegrate into their community, into their local church, and just be better at making disciples and more on fire for the Lord. Great question. Can one of these schools be made here in the States? And actually, this is something we're just talking about it. But yes, with Manna Worldwide, we're actually looking at starting one here. Yeah. Other questions? All right. Does it sound fun? Does it sound exciting? Do you think God is glorified through this? Think disciples are made? Amen. Pastor.
All right, Scott, we appreciate it so much. We've got, about 8 minutes until our morning worship service starts. So we're going to move some stuff around for you. Get around, talk to Scott. If you've got some more questions, especially if you've got personal questions, something maybe you didn't want to ask in front of everybody else, come talk to Scott, talk to Christy. I know that they are very passionate about what God is doing and about what they're able to be a part of. And I am excited that as Berean, we're able to be a part of their ministry already, and then the potential that is before us of maybe doing even more very specific projects and helping with what's happening in Latin America, but also around the world and how that's mobilizing people. Thank you, Scott.